Okay, and we're back. We are back with our amazing mompreneur mom panel.
Hello, ladies.
How you guys doing today? Good. Okay, so today we are talking discipline. Disciplining our children.
Right.
It's such a hard word, discipline, right?
It is. Discipline, yelling. I
Well,
don't know.
hopefully it's not too much yelling, but but let's get your feedback on disciplining and how you deal with tantrums and meltdowns. So maybe we should start with that one.
Okay, so what do you do when your child has a meltdown?
In public.
I was going to say, it depends on the setting.
Right.
Depends who's watching.
Exactly.
Or is that bad? Should it not? Kelly?
I always parent like nobody's watching. Because so often we parent for the benefit of the lady in line at the grocery store, and then we start doing things that we normally wouldn't do or we don't believe in. So I always parent like no one's watching. So I just stick to my guns. I do what I feel is right, what I know is best for my kids, regardless of who's around me or who's giving me the hairy eyeball for how I'm doing it.
That's a very strong response, because you often hear, or when you read something, sometimes people say to parent like someone is watching when you're at home, so you don't overreact on children. So, but that's a really good point.
Well, for me, I'm very confident in how I parent and how I discipline.
Yes.
So for me, it's just about sticking to my guns and doing what I feel is best. So
that's a great answer.
I really like that because it just enforces that consistency.
Yeah.
Consistency.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like I have a very strong-willed little girl, and who is prone to yelling and the whole thing. And I find I just try. It's not in me naturally to yell. I'm not a yeller, so I just keep my cool and try to be consistent like that. And eventually, I wear her down. You know, but it's a challenge, and I just feel like I think there's not every kid is going to be the same or react the same to different things. And I think that she's just more spirited than others, and I'm going to just help her along, and I try to help her through that challenge. So that's kind of how I do it. I mean, I could break it down, but it would take forever.
Basically, kids at this age don't have the coping techniques to express their feelings. So if a tantrum happens, it's because that's their way of letting you know how they're feeling.
Yeah.
So I don't think there should be any discipline for throwing tantrums or getting upset, because we all get upset. Right? We just show it in a different way because we've grown up a little bit. So showing them or telling them or talking to them afterwards about maybe different strategies of how to cope with being angry or being upset or being sad.
Yeah. Because can a little one really rationalize it in the moment?
No.
Right?
But for me, I'm finding it's very different whether I'm disciplining my 2-year-old or my 6-year-old. My 6-year-old is sometimes manipulating the situation, and you read through it. But I think being clear and consistent is key. For me, the problem in discipline right now is making sure my husband and I are on the same page, and that we have the same message, and that one's not overreacting or the other one is underreacting, and then the kid kind of learns
To play the game.
who to play. Yeah, so that's where we're at.
I love that. I think I heard somewhere someone saying maintain a united front, and I like that because it's true. If I remember being young and playing a parent on the other one kind of deal, and so I thought, this is going to get out of hand. But it's trying to figure out, being on the same page.
But also it's hard when you've grown up with different ways. We're both disciplined different ways. So how do we come together and agree on how we're going to discipline?
And it's something you probably don't realize until you're married. Because it's not like you're on your dates or your engagement. You're like, so how are we going to discipline those kids, honey?
Right.
No, right?
Yeah.
For us, the biggest thing is realizing to take the emotion out of it. Like, it's our job to parent these children, and we need to give them guidelines and structures and boundaries, but we don't need to get all wrapped up in it and like be all emotional and hyped up and then turn on each other because, and so that's our newest thing right now is you're like, why are we getting upset? Like, this is not a big deal. Like, it's a 6-year-old having an issue. Let's deal with the issue.
I like that.
I think sometimes we internalize it, right? When our kids are acting out, our feelings are kind of hurt and we're disappointed and all of that. And it's so true. We have to remind ourselves, they're just kids and they're learning lessons and they're figuring stuff out. And it's about kind of putting yourself into their age, right? Exactly what you're saying. Like, instead of just being hurt that your kids are acting or embarrassed that they're acting in a certain way, like they're just learning lessons, right? And that's everything that it's about, right?
I think that's such a good point, pulling your own emotions out of it, because it has nothing to do with you and how you're feeling, and that's the best thing to do, because we talk about this a lot. Like, just then you overreact, right?
Yeah. And you brought up the point about being embarrassed. I think after 3 and 6 years of it, I've just accepted I'm going to be embarrassed. They are going to embarrass me a lot, and it is what it is, whether it's something they say or do or whatever, and that shouldn't negate how I parent them, because I still got to get them to that place where they're going to be socially acceptable one day.
Okay, big question.
Such a good point.
Have you guys yelled at your kids before?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yes.
And how do you feel after?
Terrible.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Every time.
You realize I'm a big person, you're a little person, this is not right. Like,
Right.
you know, one of us is supposed to be in control here.
Yeah,
And
that's
so,
It quickly gets out of control when people start raising their voices, right? And I'm totally guilty of it as well, and it's something I'm always trying to work on. But yeah, and also yelling really negatively impacts kids. And Kelly, you can speak on this a lot, right?
Yeah, definitely. Because studies have shown that yelling at our kids is actually more damaging than spanking them.
And that's like painful to hear.
Yeah, it is. And we don't think about yelling, but it's psychological aggression. And it matters. The way we speak to our children matters. It really does. And the thing is, when you mentioned guilt, you were talking about guilt for yelling. I actually don't feel a ton of guilt when I lose my temper because I've learned to cut myself slack. And I know that I don't want to yell. And I know that I'm not a yeller. But when I do lose my temper, I cut myself slack. I remind myself, okay, Kelly, you're a human being. You messed up. What's more important than the yelling is what you're going to do about it now.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Going back, making amends, apologizing, and moving forward, because the lesson in that for our kids, it shows them humility, it shows them how to repair a relationship, and it shows them that mom and dad are human too.
Right. I think that's a really good point. It's okay it's a good thing to apologize to your kids when you know you messed up, right?
Yeah.
Great example.
there's an article trending right now on Facebook just discussing how parents need to step up, like that we've lost our ability to discipline. And I was like, oh boy. And I read this article, it was a long one, and I did feel like, whoa, there's some things maybe I should be doing differently. But it's, you know, there's been this whole attachment parenting where we're supposed to be talking with our children through things and really no type of discipline. I shouldn't quote attachment parenting on that, but, you know, there's that approach. And then we've sort of forgotten how to discipline, and our kids are potentially being very rude in social situations. And so we sort of have to bridge that gap. And I'm struggling with that personally, because it's sometimes my child is like, whoa, where did she get this from? You know, and I don't know what I'm doing. So it's interesting. What are your thoughts on that?
A big shift for me was, I find there's two camps. It's like the people who want to be friends with their kids, the permissive parents. Then there's the I am the boss of you and you will do what I say. I prefer the middle ground of leadership. So for me, when I think of parenting, I think of more being a leader in my family. Because when you're a leader in business, you're not yelling at your employees or bossing them around or telling them what to do. And you're also not letting them make 50 million mistakes without correcting them and educating them and showing them the right path. So I think about bringing those leadership qualities into my parenting, and that it just makes everything so much easier, because you think, okay, what would a leader do in this situation? They wouldn't yell and scream, and they wouldn't be permissive. They would teach, they would educate, they would stay kind, and they would be firm and follow through.
And that falls along with your colleague task, right? Because we've had Kelly on the show, and you talked about this colleague task, which I think I try to use that in my mind when my kids are acting out. My son can act out quite a bit.
So we've all kind of said,
creative.
yes, we've yelled, yes, we've had a meltdown. What do you do when you need to cool down? Like, what do you do when you're going to need to take a break?
Krista, how do you...
I have to walk away. I
Yeah.
literally have to walk away. I think my kids are 6 and 4, and I feel like they've really established how to push my buttons, and they know where my buttons are, and they like to experiment with that, because that's just, I think, what kids do at that age. So I have to remove myself from the situation, and sometimes even getting them to remove themselves from the situation, but trying not to do a timeout, but more, okay, do you want to go to your room and hang out until you're feeling a little bit better, and we
Like
can
a
talk
cool
about
down
this?
period,
Yeah.
kinda?
So basically, I'm sending them in a timeout, but it's more positive than that.
Right.
I find when I'm out and I can't put them in their room, I just stop talking to them. Because the more I talk, the more she's coming back at me with things that are making me angry, and then I just snap, and then I get upset with myself.
Yeah.
So
And
I
sometimes
stop
just
talking.
redirecting, if you stop the talking and then you're like, oh, and you change the subject, that can also stop the tantrum and go into a different kind of mind frame for them. So mindset.
I tell them when I'm getting mad.
Yeah.
I just say, I am feeling, and they can sense it, right? The other day my son said, Mom, why are you getting mad? He could feel it. And I said, and I'm very honest. I say, I'm feeling very frustrated. This is what I'm trying to do. I focus on I statements, keeping it on my feelings. And then he was just like, oh, okay, well, I can help you with that, Mom. So all I had to do was ask for what I needed. So
They're also cute.
you don't have to be afraid of hiding your anger from your kids. You can tell them. But the key thing is not saying you're making me angry, is saying I am feeling angry right now. I am feeling frustrated, and then ask for what you need.
Yeah.
I could really use your cooperation in getting your boots on so we can get out that's what it was for me
Get out
2
the
days
door.
ago. So we can get out the door and be on time for school. And he's like, and then just eliciting teamwork. Can you help me with that, bud? And he's like, oh yeah, Mom. And then it's just like,
Aren't those are the beautiful parenting moments, right? This is a big subject.
Yeah.
This is something that could go on for like a long talk.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, guys.
Yes,
We're going to
thank
come
you.
back next week and talk more with these lovely ladies. But that's it for this show.
So make sure you follow us on Instagram at Diapers and Lip Gloss, and we will see you next week.
See you then.